I'm calling Stuart Nash.
Well, first of all, Mr Speaker, I just want to start on a serious note. I understand there have been two police officers shot in the Bay of Plenty. I understand they haven't been shot dead, but news is still coming. I hope, like hell, that they are fine, and we send them all best wishes, there's no doubt about that. One thing I must say, I love it when Mr Scott paraphrases Marie Antoinette, when he said to the poor, let them eat pie. Mr Scott, that comment cost Marie Antoinette her head. Be careful. And I must admit, David Seymour is always great for a laugh, isn't he? He comes in here, he's even dressed in character. He's got that woolen knit tie on and the pink shirt, and he says, sell the super, sell this, do that, do this. And he wonders why there's only one MP and they're not even polling above 1%. Well, just look at that Hansard and you'll find out why. Mr Speaker, I'm here to speak about the budget policy statement. What this does is it sets out the government's broad plans and goals and fiscal strategy. And first of all, I'd like to say, let's see how this is going to play out between 2015 and 2017, according to the government's numbers. First of all, real GDP drops by around a quarter. This is between 15 and 17. Secondly, CPI inflation increases from 0.3% to 2.1%. Thirdly, employment growth is down by about 50%. Fourthly, unemployment rates increase to 6.1%. Fifth, wage growth drops to 1.8%. And sixth, the current account percent of GDP goes from 0.35% to negative 6%. Now, are those the figures of a government with a plan, with an aspiration, with a vision? Absolutely not at all. And these are the government's figures. Mr Speaker, you know, I actually do not know what this government stands for anymore. I just have no idea what they stand for, because it seems what they are doing is leading this country down the garden path when there is such a much more attractive, viable 21st century option. There is an alternative. I have heard from every single national speaker that the TPP is the way forward. They're putting all the eggs in the TPP basket. That is their only plan for the future, the TPP. I wonder who they'll be voting for, Trump or Clinton? Mr Speaker, when we read that the government's focus is on improving public sector productivity, which is one of the pillars that Mr Scott did not talk about, this is their philosophy of let's do more for less. Well, what are the outcomes? Let's have a look in one of my portfolios, the portfolio of police. Where are we at the moment? We have these really hard-working police officers on the front line whom 86% of police officers believe that the frontline cops are under-resourced. 86%. We have burglaries at record highs. We have resolution rates below 10%. Is that more for less? Not at all. That is no way to run a law and order system. We also have police budget underspent in Auckland alone, in the three districts that make up the greater Auckland region, where burglary resolution rates are below 7%. We find that, in fact, they have underspent their budgets by $14 million. Now, there is a difference between fiscal prudence and mismanagement. And it seems to me, at this point in time, when we are saying 93% of burglaries in this country go unsolved, that I would have thought that more money and more resources would have been put into resolution. Because, Mr Speaker, this is what our public wants to see. Doing more for less is not working in the police force. And you know what, Mr Speaker? The Commissioner says he has enough money to fight crime and solve crime. Well, 86% of his staff disagree with him. I think what perhaps he needs to do is sit down and look at those results and figure out what is going on. Let's have a look at another one of my portfolios, forestry. See, the main difference between Labor and National is National believes you just stand back and you let the market take control, because the market knows best and the market will deliver optimal outcomes. Where Labor believes, where we see behaviour that is not in the best interest of New Zealand society, of our communities, then the government has a role to play there. Forestry is a classic case. I have just 4 examples of cases where New Zealand sawmills cannot get the logs they want. And we're talking about sawmills that employ a whole lot of people in areas which are usually deprived. We're talking about Northland here, we're talking about the East Coast. And these foreign log buyers are coming in and they're not providing our sawmillers with logs at export equivalent log prices. Our sawmillers aren't asking for anything else. They're not asking for any sort of deal. All they are asking is a fair go. They will pay the export equivalent log price, but they can't get it. That is not right. Let's have a look at something else. Government debt. You know, when that government took over the books, when Mr. English became the Minister of Finance, he had a gross debt of $31 billion in 2008. It's now $86 billion.
How much?
$86 billion. The net debt was down to $10 billion. It sounds a lot, but in the scheme of things, $10 billion, that's what net debt was down to. It's now $62 billion. That is a substantial amount of money. But more, what tends to get forgotten about this is that $62 billion has to be serviced. That is a significant amount of taxpayer money that is going to overseas institutions to service that substantial debt, and it's expected to get a lot worse. Let's also have a look at another measure. We hear the government say they are aspirational for New Zealand. We're going to grow the, was it Mr. Scott, grow the pie? Well, let's have a look at a measure which I think determines how well we're doing. Exports as a percent of GDP. Not 2008, 32%. Now, 28.4. 28.4 exports as a percent of GDP. As a trading nation, the government should be incredibly concerned about that. As a person who was involved in trade for a number of years, I look at these figures and go, goodness me, we have a whole lot of New Zealand companies here who should be doing a whole lot better. But that government has not put in a regulatory or a legislative environment that has allowed that to happen. And there are 3 members sitting over there at the moment that are on the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee when we have talked about research and development help for our companies, and they all know, because they're businessmen, they're shrewd guys, they know that it was not the package needed by our small to medium businesses to really drive growth, to scale up and go international. And that is what we need in this country. There is no doubt about that. Mr. Speaker, Labor believes in governing for those who work hard. We believe in giving all Kiwis a fair go. We believe in first world early childhood education. This government gutted what was acknowledged as one of the world-leading early childhood education. We believe in providing education all the way through. This government, Mr. Speaker, this government cut night classes, and they gave the most pathetic excuses, but every single reason that people undertook a night class was the right reason. We will reinstall them because we understand that community is at the heart of every single country. And if you wandered around my electorate, Mr. Speaker, you would have seen Napier Boys High, Tamatea, Taradale, Napier Girls, hives of activity after dark. Now the lights are out. It doesn't matter, Mr. Bishop. If someone wanted to go to a night class and learn crochet, then they could gather with 12, 15, 20 other people and learn crochet, because you know what? It wasn't necessarily about the crochet. It was about people interacting with those in their community. It's about community. It's about these people who haven't many other interests, gathering for 1 or 2 hours a week. That is all. With those of a like mind. It's about building communities. What that government did was destroy the communities. Mr. Speaker, there is no vision with this government, there is no plan, and they've lacked aspiration. And it seems yet again that in 2017, it will take a Labor government to restore the settings, restore community, build communities, as it did in 1935, 1957, 1972, 1984 and 1999. Anyone who knows their political history will know that after a national government, it takes a Labor government to come in and restore the settings and rebuild the Kiwi dream. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.